Support for Louisiana, the state we're in, is provided by...
Every day, I go to work for Entergy.
I know customers are counting on me.
So Entergy is investing millions of dollars
to keep the lights on
and installing new technology
to prevent outages before they happen.
Together,
we power life.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.
Sexual assault is the most underreported crime.
Updates on the Madison Brooks story.
Lawmakers may not be as in the know about marijuana as some people in the community are.
Is marijuana legal in Louisiana?
Black people are underrepresented on that quilt. As many miles as it is, there are very few of us.
The HIV/AIDS quilt and what it means for the state. A first for 3 public high schools in Louisiana. They'll be testing out an African American Studies AP course soon.
Yes, Santa Monica High School, Frederick Douglass High School in New Orleans, and Baton Rouge Magnet School will be offering these courses in the 24-25 school year.
These schools are 3 of 60 nationwide piloting the course. These AP classes have been scrutinized lately nationally, following a ban of them by Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida.
Yep, we'll check it out. And now to news making headlines across the state.
After nearly 7 years of back and forth, a settlement has been reached in the Alton Sterling case. The Baton Rouge Metro Council agreed to pay $1.7 million to protesters who argued that Baton Rouge police officers used excessive force and violated the civil rights of protesters following Sterling's death. The council voted 7-4 in favor of the settlement. Some opponents of the decision say the matter should have been taken up by a jury, while proponents say justice was finally served. Before any money is doled out to the 14 plaintiffs involved, U.S. District Judge John D. Gravel must approve the settlement. The lawsuit against Hurricane Katrina and Rita victims has been dropped. The state of Louisiana alleged that the homeowners misused grant money to make repairs when they were really meant for home elevation. Defendants in the case insisted that they were told they could use the grants, which were around $30,000, for any hurricane-related repairs they needed. The state tried to recoup that money by suing more than 3,000 homeowners in a $103 million lawsuit. U.S. Congressman Troy Carter said Thursday in a press conference that the suit would be dropped. The Louisiana Department of Transportation Secretary is retiring after 7 years of service. Shawn Wilson announced Thursday that he is stepping down from his role on March 4th. In a statement Wilson released, he said, quote, "I have new adventures and goals ahead." Some believe this move is Wilson's way of moving toward the governor's race, though Wilson himself has not expressed any intent to enter. During his tenure, the state invested $5.5 million in infrastructure projects. He was also appointed the president of the American Association of State, Highway, and Transportation Officials, making him the first African American to do so. LCMC Health Systems in New Orleans and Willis-Knighton Health Systems in Northwest Louisiana are the target of a class action lawsuit alleging illegal release of patient data. Herman & Katz filed the suit, claiming the hospitals used a computer code called Metapixel, which is an analytics tool used to track activity on websites. The law group says the code, which was created by the same company that owns Facebook and Instagram, analyzed and shared data of hundreds of thousands of patients, including medical conditions, prescriptions, and appointment details. LCMC Health released a statement saying they're taking the allegations with the utmost urgency.
There's new info in the Madison Brooks case. She's the LSU student, the 19-year-old student investigators say was raped, then left by the road and hit and killed by a car. A grand jury convened this week, plus one of the suspects accused now faces arrest for a third rape. LPP's Layne Miller, a junior at LSU's Manship School of Journalism, is following the story and joins us now. Layne.
Thank you for joining us. So what's the latest with the response from LSU students?
Kara, last time I was here, we spoke about other students sharing their experiences with sexual assault. Some were sharing their stories online anonymously, others gathering around campus to spread awareness. I spoke with one woman who was willing to tell us her story. We normally don't reveal the identity of sexual assault victims or record their testimonies, but we received permission to share the next story. Some of the information may be disturbing.
I think the biggest thing I struggled with afterwards was finding my security back and feeling comfortable. That was the longest thing that it took for me to be comfortable with again, was being in public spaces and just trying to feel safe in my own home. That was something that had been taken away from me. I didn't feel like my apartment and my home were safe anymore. Personally speaking, I did not report to the broader Baton Rouge police, mostly because I did not feel comfortable having been assaulted and then having to turn around and run through those examinations with a stranger and having things like photos of very intimate areas taken and presented in court was not something I was comfortable with. It was a very hard thing for me to admit to myself that I had been assaulted. And that was one of the major issues on why I didn't report immediately after, was I was terrified of the way that the police would react and my university would react to allegations. I think the biggest thing that I struggled with was not getting compassion from my university, I think was my biggest struggle, specifically because I was assaulted by another student. It was a lot of attitude of, this is just, he said, she said, we don't have proof, we can't do anything unless you have, documented, witnesses, and a situation where things are happening behind a closed door are not going to be taken seriously.
So difficult to hear. Most people, men and women, struggle to even report sexual assault. In fact, Layne also talked with Mendy Escudier. She's a nurse in charge of administering rape kits for East Baton Rouge Parish. She explains why it's difficult for victims to come forward.
So like we were talking about earlier, all the sexual assault cases in college students, the one specifically with Madison Brooks kind of spotlighted a bigger problem and it shocked a lot of people, but do you really think it's that shocking?
No, of course not. I mean, if you look at the stats nationally, some organizations report 1 in 4, some report 1 in 6 women are victims of sexual violence at some point in their life, 1 in 8 to 1 in 10 men. So no, obviously not a shocking thing.
Right.
And if you look at our numbers just in East Baton Rouge Parish, or really all of our region, they just keep growing every year.
Right. With that growing number, we heard that one LSU student went to a local hospital to get a rape kit test done, and she told us that the nurse said about 7 other girls go in a week to get those examinations done. Do you think that's accurate?
So not necessarily 7 college students. We are at a point here in Region 2, which is East Baton Rouge Parish and the surrounding parishes, where we do about 1 a day. So anywhere between 300 to 400 a year. Now it varies. Sometimes it's 4 a day, sometimes it's none, but we average about 350 exams a year. So those are not all college students, but yeah.
Wow, that's a high number.
It is a high number.
About 1 a day.
1 a day, and honestly, it's still not high enough. And I know that sounds strange for me to say, but we know that 1 in 4 women, 1 in 6 men are experiencing this, so the numbers should be higher.
Right. About how many of those that actually do come in, do you predict that they are actually college aged?
So I looked at the numbers from 2021, and we did 324 forensic medical exams, which is what we call them. It's a rape kit, but it's a little bit more than that. We know we take care of the whole patient. But 71 of those were between 18 and 24.
Like, how many college-age students do you think don't actually go in to get one done?
I think there's probably a great number. Sexual assault is the most underreported crime, and there are so many reasons for that, right? It's the culture that we live in. It's that victim blaming mentality that we have, where we talk about what a victim was wearing or the fact that they were drinking, and so that really leads to underreporting, right? Also the fact that it's a shame-based crime. It's very personal, so it's very difficult for people to report, and so I truly believe not a lot of people come forward that really should.
And you said a lot of people don't actually report. Specifically for those college students at the university, why wouldn't they report it?
For those reasons, just that it's a difficult, first of all, a college student is navigating a lot of things, right? Sometimes being away from home for the first time and having to take care of themselves, or they had their parents to take care of them before. So it's just a lot to navigate. And then the whole peer pressure thing, you know, friend groups, and it just makes it very difficult to come forward. And one of the things I think it's important for people to know is there's a federal law that says, and we do a lot of this, you can come in to the hospital and do what we call a non-report, meaning I can take care of you, I can do a head-to-toe assessment, treat you and test you for sexually transmitted infections, and collect evidence. And you do not have to talk to law enforcement, provided you're 18 years or older. You know, we're mandatory reporters, so anybody that's 17, 364 and under, we have a duty to report. But if you're 18 and above, we can collect that evidence so it's not lost and hold it for up to a year and really indefinitely.
Right. And whenever you worked at the university, you had X amount of students come in a week. How many of those do you think you should have seen a week? Like, how many students at the university didn't actually come in and report?
It's really hard to say a number, but I would venture to say many.
And we know recently another arrest was made for one of the defendants in Madison Brooks's case, and it stemmed back to Tigerland in the same bar, Reggie's. You know, did y'all see a lot of survivors come in and their incidents started at Tigerland as well? I
mean, sure we did. Really anywhere, and I'm real hesitant to blame certain places strictly because we want to put the blame on the perpetrators, right? We don't want to blame the alcohol, we don't want to blame the victims, we don't want to blame the places because it's going to happen no matter what. But sure, I mean, it's a common place for students to go, really not just students at specific universities, but students from everywhere. So yeah, I mean, we did.
Is there any other big piece of information that we should include or that I didn't ask you about?
So just, I wanted to know, everybody to know about the non-reports, but also that even if you don't come in right away, we can collect evidence and give medical care for up to 5 days, 120 hours out. And so we encourage people to come in. There's no pressure. Nobody's going to force you to report. Nobody's going to force you to do anything you don't want to do. We just want to be able to take care of these victims.
Well, this has really shown what it's like from the victim's perspective. I mean, what other obstacles do they have besides reporting when it comes to sexual assault?
Their daily life, I found by interviewing this one survivor, that their daily life is kind of hindered. She said she was uncomfortable at home even, and she said she was scared to go to school because her assaulter is also a student at the same university. She even told me she's transferring schools and moving out of state. So, you know, just daily life is a lot harder for these victims. And then also, go and get medical help after this happens. She didn't go get medical or report anything until a year later because it was so hard to come to terms with that even getting medical help is a really big deal. And a lot of people don't even get that far.
Yeah, you can see why it'd be underreported.
Yeah, exactly. But it's important to note for these survivors that getting medical attention is very important. It's not supposed to be invasive, although it feels very invasive once again, but it's important for them to go get help and to know they don't have to report it to police or seek legal action.
Well, thank you so much, Layne, for coming in and giving those reports.
Of course.
Lawmakers legalized marijuana products that have the ability to create a high. The goal was to only approve hemp products for adult use with little concentration of THC, but instead, the legislature greenlit Delta 8 and Delta 9 strains. The law is expected to be tweaked during the spring session. Here to talk about this is Jim Engster, a political analyst. So first, how do you accidentally approve something like this?
That's a good question. I'm not sure we've gotten the full answer, but lawmakers may not be as in the know about marijuana as some people in the community are. We know we've had a revolution, and now any street corner in any big city in Louisiana, we're going to have the familiar aroma of marijuana in the air, and we're one of 38 states that allows medicinal use. Now, 19 states have recreational use. We're not there yet, but lawmakers may have inadvertently got us where we're pretty close.
Right, and so this means it's perfectly legal. Anybody can go out and use this stuff.
Yeah, well, people who use these products tell me that 8 milligrams will, quote, get you high. And of course, people do this legally and they get behind the wheel and things can happen when people are impaired. But I think we're in one of the most conservative states with one of the most conservative legislatures. I find it highly doubtful that this act will stand through the next session.
Right, and that was going to take me to my next question. How are they planning to tweak this so that people can't have access to these products?
Well, the genie's out of the bottle, literally, but I suspect they can make it where certain milligram levels are unacceptable, and they probably will do that, and then we'll see if people follow the law. But right now, even if you get arrested for marijuana possession and using it illegally, if you don't have the medicinal yard pass, the penalty is really minimal. It's like a traffic ticket. And we know in Louisiana in the past, as of just a few years ago, there were 50 people serving life sentences for marijuana possession because it was a third offense. And that has changed dramatically. Some would say for the better, but maybe the legislature in its wisdom feels like they've gone a bit too far.
So let's backpedal a little bit. How long has this been legalized?
Well, it's a couple of years now. John Bel Edwards was the governor, and of course he is against legalizing it for recreational purposes. I remember this was an issue in the 2015 governor's election, and then a few years, I believe, into his second term, this became the law of the state of Louisiana, and now most of the nation, including most of the southern states, have followed suit. So there's nothing unusual about it being legal for medicinal uses. But it is unusual to have these high levels, 8 milligrams, that would make somebody high pretty quickly if they ate enough gummies. And I think that we've had a sea change, and people generally are okay with it. It hasn't caused the world to stop the way some people said it would.
Right, and I've seen a lot of people on the internet have been complaining because they know that this law is going to go back to session and they know there are going to be tweaks that are happening. Do you think that there's possibly any chance that some of it will linger?
If they're active enough and have money to deliver to politicians, most polls show that most people in the country, and in Louisiana, for example, they are against assault weapons, but yet they're the law of the state and the nation because the people who treasure them, they're forceful in politics, and it's a question whether this will have a groundswell and people will become more active, and I don't know if that will be the case. And now those who are naysayers would say that they're too high to even know what they're doing, but I think it's been proved that marijuana use is not necessarily any more dangerous than use of hard liquors. So the world has not changed, and now we have essentially something that was given to people that is taken away. At any time that happens on any issue, there is pushback.
All right, so we don't really know what's going to happen. We just have to wait till the spring session.
I think so.
All right, well, thank you so much for talking.
Good to see you, Kara, as always.
Sections of the AIDS Quilt came through Louisiana this month at Southern and Dillard universities. It's part of the Change the Pattern campaign. It's focusing on communities of color and also the LGBTQ plus community. Dr. Joyce Turner Keller, woman in red.
Yes,
today,
definitely.
And looking good. We've seen you in purple and blue before, but the red looks wonderful.
Thank you.
You could have an S on the front of your dress because you are a superwoman when it comes to AIDS awareness, activism, and some people think it's gone.
True.
It's not.
It is not gone.
It's not. And the numbers in Louisiana are not great, again.
No, they're not. We're number 4 again.
That's right. In black and brown, 78.5% of new diagnoses, black and brown.
Correct.
And
people of color.
60% under the age of 34.
Correct.
So the quilt.
Yes.
One of the reasons it came to Louisiana was to remind people this is still happening.
Definitely. And the other reason the quilt was brought to Baton Rouge as well, or came to Louisiana, is because black people are underrepresented on that quilt. As many miles as it is, there are very few of us that have transitioned that are even recognized on the quilt. So basically, the quilt was brought here for us to actually make panels. I just think it's critical that people stop being so complacent and feeling that, they're safe. I did a video for National Black HIV Awareness Day. And the video I didn't put myself in it. I just sat in my window and I videotaped the cars going down the street. And in that video, I mentioned, I wonder how many people knew that it was National Black HIV Awareness Day.
Right.
How many people had actually gotten tested? How many people took for granted they were safe? How many knew knew their status? And then I talked about how we don't have the conversation before we have sex. We'll meet somebody and they look good and, we find out, we see him get out of a car, her get out of a car. And we talk about the profession. And we just get so caught up after a few drinks or whatever, and we go and have sex. But we never talk about what that status is.
Of course, part of that is the medicines that have been formulated and now exist, that you can take a pill and it's supposed to take it away.
And it doesn't. And I think it's critical that people understand that even if you take an injection for PrEP, then one thing you need to do is take that shot every other month, depending on what that medicine is, what has been prescribed.
Right.
The other thing with the PrEP, with the pill, Truvada, that is something that you have to maintain. You don't just take it today because you're going out tonight.
Right.
That pill needs to be taken 28 to 30 days consistently. And then you need to at least, because you don't know how it's working in your system, you need to check with your physician. And that's something you do ongoing. You don't just take it for 30 days and get off of it.
Right. You have been in the streets, you've been where it's happening, you've been
Correct.
where people need help, and few people are willing to go out there and help them.
Right.
You have done that in all realms,
right.
From church to the street. You've been
bus
there.
stops, under the bridge. I've gone even to truck stops, and I've even worked with the company AHF to bring a 18-wheeler to Baton Rouge, what we call a condemnation tour.
Right.
And I even had the police called on me for giving out condoms,
right.
And then to be accused of being a loose woman, that's okay, because I think we have to be honest about the fact that sex is what it is. We talk about the age limit where people actually getting infected with HIV. That's because we make sex dirty. We don't talk about it. We don't tell our kids that which is forbidden is enticing.
Right.
We don't tell them the risk of having unprotected sex. We just make them feel ashamed about it so they don't talk to us about it.
Right.
But if we're more vocal and more open about that this is a natural thing that happens between two people who love each other, then it wouldn't be so much. We would actually, I think the numbers would come down if we had the kind of conversation that we need to have. And that conversation should be had after school.
Right.
At the kitchen table.
Right.
The problem is that we don't sit down and talk at the kitchen table anymore.
Let's touch on where Louisiana is right now. And
we're number 4.
Number 4 in the nation, which is higher than it was
after
it was at the top for a while, and then
in 2020 we were number 12. COVID,
right?
After COVID hit, our numbers began to rise.
Of the cases in Louisiana, which again, we're fourth now,
Mm-hmm.
over 27% in the New Orleans metro area.
Correct.
And that's known as Region
1.
Region 1.
Uh-huh.
Baton Rouge area is Region 2.
Correct.
That's Metro Baton Rouge, nearly 20% of the cases. I'm not surprised that those numbers are higher in these two cities than the rest of the state.
I'm not surprised. I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
Because it seems like whatever we're preaching and whatever we're teaching is falling upon deaf ears. I just feel like, when are people going to actually realize that people are still getting infected with HIV and they're still dying when they don't get into treatment?
You know, that's what I'm hearing from you, because I can see you work so hard.
I do.
And it's the disappointment that no matter what you say, it doesn't seem to sink in.
No, it doesn't.
So your outreach, and you have a nonprofit aspiration.
Correct.
Tons of things. But your outreach, how has that changed in the past 5 years?
I'm focused more on the faith-based. I'm focused more on research, because so many times we're not exposed to clinical trials, and I know that's what we need to be. We don't need to just be introduced to medicines, but those medicines need to be tested on us, so that, you know, we don't just get a blanket diagnosis without them considering, you know, who we are as a race of people, as opposed to just generalizing the medicine that they're giving to us as a people.
Well, on National Black History Month, it's important to have this conversation, and it's always great to have the conversation with you.
Thank you for having me. I always appreciate you. Thank you.
And everyone, that's our show for this week. Remember, you can watch anything LPB anytime, wherever you are, with our LPB PBS app.
You can catch LPB news and public affairs shows, as well as other Louisiana programs you've come to enjoy over the years. And please like us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
For everyone at Louisiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Andre Moreau.
And I'm Kara St. Cyr.
Until next time, that's the state we're in.
Every day, I go to work for Entergy.
I know customers are counting on me.
So Entergy is investing millions of dollars to keep the lights on and installing new technology
to prevent outages before they happen.
Together.
We power life.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.